Kroger Delivery has one mission: to deliver the freshest food right to your door. That's why our drivers are pros. Our trucks are refrigerated. And when it comes to low prices, we always deliver. With $20 off your first order of $75 or more, there's no better time to get in on the action. Mission accomplished. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm revealing what it takes to actually take care of yourself, how to actually take care of your body, mind, spirit, and heart, what that means, what you need to do on a daily basis to keep that current, how you can stay healthy, happy, and have things balanced in your life without feeling as though part of the certain situations seem to be falling by the wayside or certain things seem to be working while other parts of your life seem to be falling down. You know, I find it interesting because when we think about self-care, oftentimes we don't think about everything that we need to do to actually take care of ourselves. Many of us are too busy taking care of other people. We're trying to save others in our life. We're trying to be the Rock of Gibraltar for like 50 people. And oftentimes we're not doing that for ourselves. We're not focusing on ourselves. We're not focusing on our own health. And yes, I agree that self-care is important, and I do agree that we want to take ego out of it, but there's a huge difference between ego and self-care. And I'll talk about that a little bit in today's show, because in order to really focus on what's important for our self-care, we actually have to take some time to do what? To focus on ourselves. And I know some of you out there are like, you know what, I don't ever have time to focus on myself. I'm constantly thinking of other people. I got loads of responsibility. You know, I got a family responsibility. I got children I have to take care of. All this stuff is going on, right? But in order to be healthy, in order to be in the moment, in order to do what we need to do, we've really got to look at all aspects of our body, mind, spirit, and heart, and think about what we need to do on a daily basis to be sure that everything is in alignment. You know, I often have run into people that, you know, they have this very egotistical outlook about themselves, you know, like they're very narcissistic. It's all about them. All they think about is their needs, their wants, and their desires. And that is not at all what I'm talking about with self-care. Not at all. We're not even thinking about that. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's like when you think about the concept of what's going on, we really got to think honestly about what we need to do, how we need to preserve our health care, how we need to work on our happiness and our joy quotient, and what needs to be emphasized and what needs to be let go. You know, let's begin the conversation on Live Your True Life Perspectives with really talking about body. Our body. Our body is our vehicle. It's our vehicle that transports us from place to place. It's the vehicle that gets us from here to there. It's the vehicle that allows us to move around the planet. And that vehicle needs to be taken care of properly. And I know many of you actually take care of your vehicles, your actual car that you drive around in, right? You take care of your car. You bring your car into the shop. If a light goes on your car, you take it in. You know, if it's low on oil, you take care of that. You know, if the tires are low, you take care of that. If there's a little fender bender, you go get that taken care of at the body shop, right? And then some of you don't really care that much about your car. And it shows, and it's not a big deal. I've been on both sides of the equation where I've really been proactive with my automobile, and I have been very non-proactive with my automobile. But when we think about our transportation, not in a metal car, a vehicle that we buy at a dealership or at a car lot, when we think about that vehicle as our body, we begin to realize that much like a car, we need to take care of it. We need to take care of it. And I find the car analogy to be quite good because a car needs to be driven, right? A car needs to be driven. If you've ever had a car and you've been out of town for long periods of time and you haven't driven the car, you've probably had battery issues, okay? You've probably had a tough time starting the car, and when you did, it didn't drive that well, and you had to really charge that battery back up. And so that's definitely something that we have to do in our own lives with our body. And that also relates to our muscles and our organs and everything else. We got to use it so we don't lose it. And we got to take care of it. So we've got to exercise. And I know that some of you say, well, I just don't have time. I don't have time to exercise. And I understand that. I have a crazy schedule. I have a crazy work schedule, and I work really hard to try to put that exercise into my daily routine. And so far, the only option that I found really is in the morning. Way before work is the only time I found to do it, because when I'm at work, I have back-to-back clients in therapy session and in coaching sessions, and then whether it's a radio show or doing another video for YouTube or creating video content, or even working on the series, there's something going on at all times that I can't leave. And I know that your work is demanding, and so when you get to work, the last thing you're thinking about is, I'm going to go to the gym and go sweat a bunch and come back to the office. It's really not in the cards. And so we've got to figure out the best case scenario. How can I get to the gym? How can I get there more often than not? What needs to be my scheduling? How much time can I allot? And what do I need to do to make that a reality? I found also, which is interesting, is much like the car analogy, if your dealership or the car maintenance repair shop that you go to is really far away, that's also going to get in the way of you maintaining the vehicle. Instead, if the dealership/maintenance repair shop is close by your work or your home, it's going to be easier for you to go by there, to drop off the vehicle to actually be worked on. Now, much like that analogy is our body and the gym. Think about the gym. If your gym is far away, you're not going, okay? If you don't feel comfortable at your gym, you're not going. If your gym is too expensive, you're probably not going. So you got to think about, where do I need to go? What's close by? What will I go and do? And that's what I've found, is that I've taken all the guesswork out of it. I live in a building where there's a gym, okay? Does it have the best of equipment? No. Does it have a lot of equipment? No. But it's adequate, and it has stuff. And so I use that to my advantage because it's right there. I'm right next to it. I don't have to go a separate place to get there. I'm not dressing up to go. I'm not intimidated by the groups of people. I don't have to drive far. It's something that I can go to and get there, and it doesn't take a lot of time, and I can make sure that I always have it in my schedule. And that's something that you really want to think about, is, are you making it easy for your schedule to go to the gym? Are you picking a place that's feasible? Are you choosing wisely when it comes to your time and effort? And that's huge with maintaining the body part, the part that we're talking about right now, when you're actually taking care of yourself. Because there's many parts, right? You got body, which is a component. I guess the better word is component. You got mind, which is a component. You got spirit, which is a component. And I think that heart, it can be, part of body and part of spirit. But I think that the heart is the other component. We'll talk about that here later on in the hour. But when we're talking about body, besides exercise, we need to find the proper exercise, a combination of cardio and weight training. Everybody needs to accelerate the heart rate, and we need to be able to monitor the heart rate to make sure that we're in a good spot. We need to monitor that heart rate, and we need to do what feels good, because we don't want to be completely out of breath, but we also want to push ourselves a little bit to condition ourselves and to better our body. But we also want to add some weight so we can have some muscle and some tone. When we lose muscle and tone, that's when we have problems with our body. That's when we begin to feel frail and beaten down, and we have pain, aches, and pains. Another part of the regiment with making sure that our body is in the proper state is the eating quotient. How are you eating? What are you eating? Okay? What are you eating in your day-to-day life? Are you taking care of your body? Are you taking care of your body by what you're eating? Because many of you out there, and I'm also part of this too, many of you out there are not eating for your body. You're not eating properly. You're not taking care of yourself. And that is becoming a problem. And I understand that because I've done things that were not good as far as eating is concerned. I've made bad choices, and I understand that. But I've also found out about my choices and the fact that the choices that I've made that are bad have come back to haunt me, or they've made me feel bad. And so one of the things that I think you might want to check on is, what are you eating that makes you feel good? What are you eating that's making you feel better? What are you eating that makes you feel sick to your stomach? What are you eating that takes you off target? What are you eating that makes you feel frail? We often don't realize how important what we're eating is to our body, mind, spirit, heart, because we're not thinking about that. We don't really think that it has that huge of an impact in our life, which it does. And so when I return, I'm going to be talking about the diet that I've chosen in my life, how I feel good, the stuff that I realize isn't good for me because I can feel it, because I feel how it's acting in my body, because I need to be on target just like you do every minute of every day. And if food can help, we want to make sure that we're choosing the right foods to eat. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
A strong host game needs a strong wing game. Add Popeye's wings to your game day spread, and the crew won't just be cheering, they'll be salivating. With 8 bold, crispy Louisiana flavors to satisfy everyone's taste buds, our wing game is strong enough to always get you the W. At $5.99 for a 6-piece, order bone-in or boneless for your next watch party. Someone just wrapped up the title of Most Valuable Host.
Love that chicken from Popeyes.
At participating U.S. restaurants, price may vary, tax extra.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm revealing the things you can do to take care of yourself right now, to be aware of your body, mind, spirit, and heart, and how to really activate that and how to feel solid and secure in your day-to-day life. Joining me later in the studio, Reggie Harvey. Reggie Harvey is a good friend of mine, an author of an amazing book, Anatomy of a Patient, that you can find on Amazon. And he'll be joining us in our discussion tonight as well on taking care of ourselves and the concept of self-care versus ego, which I think is very interesting. Right before the break, I was talking about the component of body, our body, and how we have to take care of that because it's so important. I've been talking about exercise, that we have to really focus on getting enough exercise. It's just like a vehicle. It's just like your car. If your car is not being run enough, it's probably wearing down the battery. If we're not taking care and keeping it up, whether it's the tires or the engine or the oil or the gas, it's not running very properly for you. And just like a car, the gasoline is the fuel. Just like our fuel is what we eat in our diet. And so what fuel are you putting into your body? What fuel are you using? Are you using high octane fuel, or are you using non-high octane fuel? There were many years of my life where I chose the cheapest you could find, and I chose whatever was quickest, and it didn't make me feel very good. And then I got better and better and better about my diet. And as I got better and better and better, I realized that even if I was doing well and I was eating well, some of the foods that I was eating didn't really work for me. It didn't make me feel good. It didn't make me feel viable. It didn't make me feel healthy. I might have felt sick. I might have felt worn down. And so in my life, I've found that I do best with a lot of vegetables, okay? A lot of vegetables. I do well with fish, which I like. I can occasionally do maybe some chicken, but that's about it. And I found that I have eaten other things like cheeses and candies and cookies and stuff, but that stuff does not help me. That stuff kind of hinders me and makes me feel bad. And I've realized that some of us really need to focus on what's really making us feel good. You can keep a journal of this, and this is what I advise many of my clients to do when we've really worked through a lot of the issues. And now there's small little tweaks that need to be made and things that they don't understand why they feel bad about. A lot of this comes down to diet. What are you eating? Are you eating something that you're allergic to? And many of us don't even realize the implications of being allergic to food, what that means, and how that shows in life about being allergic. And I'd like to do another show on that at some time, because being allergic to foods, oftentimes we don't realize that the reason why we're feeling a certain way is because we are allergic to whatever we're eating. Very interesting stuff. And I didn't realize I was allergic to sesame seeds until I was probably 20 years old. And I also, and that was pretty bad. And then I didn't realize another thing. I was allergic to strawberries. And I didn't realize the strawberry allergy till much later on. And I remember, like, throughout my life, on Valentine's Day, my husband would get me strawberries and, chocolate covered strawberries or something like that. And it was interesting because they were so pretty and so nice. But every time I had one, I didn't realize that I was allergic to strawberries. Like, I was just like, God, I was like, every Valentine's Day is just horrible, I mean, it's always painful. And it was funny because I used to go to this place that made handmade strawberry margaritas. And I would have one, and within 20, 30 minutes, and I was eating too, though, okay? And in 20, 30 minutes, I would feel really, really bad. And I never knew that it was the strawberry. And so there's certain things in foods that you might not even be aware of that's actually causing you to be highly allergic to those things, causing you pain and being a source of pain and agony in your life. Definitely things that you want to be aware of. So body is this amazing component, and I could talk about this for hours and years, but the next component that we need to head into is the mind. What are you doing to really help the mind? What are you doing? What kind of content are you watching on TV? What kind of books are you reading? What kind of stuff are you putting into your mind? What kind of work do you do? Are you using your mind on a constant basis? Do you feel as though you're using your mind? In my work, I'm constantly using my mind. I'm using my mind and my heart in a combination. I'm constantly using my mind to do deductive reasoning, to really think things through, and to help my clients to the best of my ability, and to really hone in and listen to what they're saying in session, because I really hold that very sacred. And so when I'm listening with much intent, my mind is working on overload, okay? And think about doing that for 7-8 hours a day. And I pride myself in my ability to hear, my ability to listen, and my ability to process what is being said to me, both verbally and non-verbally, and being able to understand what that resonates in. And I think that's, definitely probably part of the success that I've had with clients, to help them to find what's wrong in their life, to really understand the challenges they're going through, to understand the toxic relationship that they're trying to get over, and the list goes on. But you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to fuel your mind? What are you putting in it? Are you being very cautious about the content of the things that you're viewing, the things that you are reading, the music that you're listening to, the type of people that you are around? I mean, negativity, I believe, is like it's like a flu or a cold. It's like it's contagious. You got to be very careful, and you don't want to be extremely negative. You want to be very careful about getting negative in your mindset, but because it can cause great pain and suffering in your life. Definitely not something that you want to have, because that can influence your mind in such a way that's not only negative, but it really does a number on you mentally and emotionally, and then ultimately physically, because the more negative we are, the more it actually impacts us in an unhealthy way, where we actually are unable to process certain things mentally, emotionally, physically, and that can actually break down our physical body as well. Because remember, our mind is very powerful. Thoughts become things, okay? So when our thoughts are able to become things because our mind is that powerful, remember that when you're thinking very negative thoughts, we have the ability to make ourselves healthy, just as though we have the ability to make ourselves ill. Things to really think about and to process and to understand, because many of us don't realize how powerful our thoughts truly are. And because we don't realize, we allow all kinds of things into our mind. We allow all types of content in our mind. And so if we're watching very violent, overly violent content, that's a red flag we need to think about. Remember, we cannot compartmentalize, and we cannot unsee what we've already seen, and we cannot unhear what we've already heard. All that stuff goes into our subconscious and stays there, housed in the hard drive of our mind. Our mind has ability to carry and to hold every single thing that we've ever seen, ever heard. Everything in our entire life goes in there. Can we access it consciously all the time? No, but we can subconsciously access it, and that kind of stuff can cloud or can beautify the situations in our life. Very powerful stuff that we really need to think about, because our mind is so crucial and so critical in all we do. Because one of the things that I find very interesting when I'm working with clients is the fact that many people don't realize how powerful our mind is. And we don't realize how powerful the view of ourself is, the vision of ourself, how we see ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and even further, how that view of ourselves impacts other people to believe certain things about ourselves. So if we are to walk into a room of people, if we have a really solid belief in ourselves, when we have that solid belief, it radiates subconsciously to the people around us. On the flip side, if we have a really low self-esteem and we have a really sad belief about ourselves, that will radiate also to other people as well, and they will pick up on that. It's like when we walk into a room feeling great about ourselves, it seems like everybody's in a great mood. When we walk into a room feeling really low about ourselves, we feel like everybody's picking on us. That's the power of the mind. If you haven't already, check out my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, put in Ashley, B-E-R-G-E-S, Ashley, B-E-R-G-E-S, and watch the latest videos on relationships, overcoming toxic relationships, making the best of your marriage, and the list goes on. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On tonight's show, I'm talking about taking care of yourself, what it means to take care of yourself, how to take care of your body, mind, spirit, and heart. Right before the break, I was talking about taking care of your mind, how important it is to really watch what you work on, the content that you have in your mind. What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you doing to exercise your mind, and what are you doing to feed your mind in the most positive, beneficial way as possible? Right now, I'd like to hear another perspective on taking care of oneself. I'd like to hear what Reggie has to say. Joining me live in studio, Reggie Harvey. Reggie is a survivor of a near-fatal illness. He's the author of the most recent book, Anatomy of a Patient, and he's also a dear friend. Reggie, great to have you in studio tonight.
Hey, Ashley, this is the favorite time of the week for me.
It's a wonderful week so far, and I always love hearing your perspectives.
Well, thank you. You know, every morning that I wake up, it's Christmas and New Year.
I think that's how we all should be, for the most part, as well. Some of us aren't doing that, though. But you and I were talking the other day, and I really felt compelled to bring this up. You know, we were talking about self-care, and you had a really good perspective on the idea of self-interest versus being selfish. And I kind of thought about it as self-care versus ego. Tell me a little bit more about that perspective.
Well, about 15 years ago, I was a workaholic. Up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was in my office by 5:30, and I worked till 6 in the evening, and that was my life. All my colleagues knew that, and no one made me do that. It was just something I inflicted on myself. But in the process of that, I realized that sometimes we need to take a moment just to regenerate the batteries, recharge the batteries. And we worry about disappointing others or whether or not they're going to be angry because we can't give them the attention they want. And if that's the case, then they don't have our best interest at heart anyway. So it's okay to decide, I need a day. I need 15 minutes. I need an hour. And not just an hour. I just need to do something to recharge my own battery, my own spirit. And people have to afford you that. When I got sick, I wasn't the one that lobbied to take a medical leave. It was my boss that noticed that I just wasn't quite right on. And he was the one that suggested that because of the new medications that I was on and the stress of my body, that I probably just needed to take advantage of the benefit that I had worked for and take some time. I resisted. And it was funny, the last day that I was officially at work, I had a conference call to host, and I had the bridge control. Had trouble getting people on the line. And when I finally established the bridge, my nephrologist called me and my primary care physician called me, but I couldn't answer because if I answered, I would disconnect the bridge. And I had people on the phone from New Jersey and New York and Chicago and Texas. And so I said, I'll call them back in 15 minutes. Well, I had worked from home that day. I really hadn't showered. I was in my underwear. And I decided I'd get a glass of water before calling the doctors back to see what they wanted. And before I could get the glass of water, it was bang, bang, bang on the door. And I thought they were going to tear my front door off the hinges. It was the fire department. 3 of the biggest human beings I've ever seen in my life were on my balcony, about to take an axe to my front door. And I ran to the door and opened it, and there they were, and there I was, and I forgot I was half naked. And they said, "Are you Mr. Harvey?" I said, "Well, hell yes. Whom else is going to be here?" And they were like, "Well, are you all right?" Now I'm thinking this is ridiculous. And they said, "We got an emergency life call because your doctors couldn't get a hold of you, and they thought that you had passed out." And I thought this was ridiculous. Evidently, what had happened is my phosphorus levels were abnormally high in a lab that they had just run. And it could have affected my heart. And they thought that I was passed out on the floor and unconscious. And since I lived alone, they called the fire department. So between being embarrassed and angry and confused and all of this at the same time, one of the firemen said, "Well, Mr. Harvey, you have people who care about you enough to call us to make sure you're okay." And I had never thought of it in that regard. And suddenly it didn't matter if I was butt naked or not. I realized I was in a new situation, and I had a new relationship with these doctors, but that they were significantly thinking of my best interest to the point where they activated this emergency rescue mission for me, for little old me. So that's an exaggerated form of taking time for yourself, but I wouldn't have ever thought of doing any of that, or that anybody would do that for me. And that changed my relationship with my doctors, and it changed my relationship with my boss, who had suggested I take the time. I was busy going to power myself through this, and no, I needed a moment. I needed to take a breath. I needed to take a break. And for once, it was in my best interest to prioritize myself. So that was a hard lesson for me. Now I laugh about it.
Well, I think a lot of people need to do that. I think a lot of our listeners right now, to some degree, need to prioritize themselves. And I think a lot of times we feel bad about doing it, but when you think about it, even on the airplane, when they say when there's a loss of cabin pressure, put the oxygen you put the oxygen mask on you first and then your child. The reason for that is if you die from no oxygen, you can't help anybody else.
Exactly.
But a lot of times we don't think about that because we've been told to always think about other people, but also we get into the mindset of what? Not looking toward ourselves to help ourselves, because sometimes it's easier to help everybody else because their problems are a lot easier to understand than our own.
Exactly. So, there are a lot of counterintuitive lessons to be learned, and I think we have a lot of learned behavior that as we mature, those things that were safety protocols when we were young don't apply when we're an adult and able to make decisions for ourselves. And so we have to take responsibility and become accountable for our own well-being. And that's a new experience for a lot of people.
I agree with you, Reggie, because I think a lot of times we just don't do that. We don't take the time for that. And that's where I find that a lot of people have a lot of regret toward the end of their life because they never really paid attention to themselves, what they wanted or what they needed.
Exactly. So, this is one of the life lessons that I have benefited from, having to face this scary situation. And I'm actually glad that I was forced to see these weaknesses in myself and to learn that other people really did care about me. Even they cared more about me than I cared for myself. That was an eye-opener. That was a real eye-opener. It made me not so much second guess, but it made me reevaluate. That's the word I want to use. Reevaluate my juxtaposition with the people that I believed I knew, but I never really afforded them the respect for their own discretionary authority and how they wanted to relate to me. I never gave them the opportunity to decide for themselves how they wanted to participate in my life. I was the one trying to set all the ground rules and not recognizing that they were fully cognizant adults. So it just changed everything. It humbled me, actually, that if people choose to be in our life, that is a blessing. And we don't get to set the conditions for that. Now, that doesn't mean, you talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago, about having respect for yourself and pushing back when people invade our space inappropriately. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that we need to also respect the decisions other people make about how they choose to involve themselves in our life. And especially, it'll be obvious if their intentions are good or not. But we still have to recognize it and embrace it.
That's a powerful perspective, Reggie, and I totally understand where you're coming from. Where can our listeners find more information about you?
Hey, I've got a new website, reggieharvey.net, ReggieHarvey.net. And there you can find out a little bit about me. You can find out how to access or purchase the book from Amazon. And there's also an opportunity for you to make comments and for me to respond. So I just started the page, so it's brand new.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great, and I know some folks are going to be making some comments and also checking out the book. Anybody that's going through a serious life illness or a family member or friend who is, this book will add not only information to your life, but will help you to walk through those uncharted waters with a little more understanding and probably feeling a little bit better and less fearful. Thanks, Reggie, for coming in the studio. I look forward to seeing you next week.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Ashley.
When I return, I'm going to be talking more about taking care of yourself and really talking about the spirit component as well as your heart. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On tonight's show, I've been talking about taking care of yourself, what it means to take care of yourself, body, mind, spirit, and heart. And right before the break, we've been talking with Reggie Harvey. Reggie was really helping us understand even a more accurate perspective when it came to ego and self-care and really understanding how to really take control of one's life and really focus on doing things that's needed in one's life, but also understanding the value and the importance of our life. I think a lot of times we go through the motions. We don't realize the value that we give. We don't realize the value of who we are. And instead, we have a tendency of having a low self-esteem, low self-worth that contributes to us not taking care of ourselves, or we feel like we're not worthy. And so right now, I'd like to get into the spirit and heart concepts, because I think these two particular facets of us is really valuable. You know, spiritually, because we've talked about body, we've talked about mind, and now we're talking about spirituality and spirit. Are you meditating? Are you praying? You know, that's one thing that people can do and you can do to really better your life. It's something that I really take into consideration in my life is meditation, prayer, consistency, and really focusing on those things in my life. And it's become a very important factor in my life and something that I cannot overlook and something that I've chosen to embark on every day to give my life even more discernment and understanding, depth, personal honesty. And it also helps me to realize when I have destructive behavior. I know that many of us deal in our lives, day-to-day lives, and we create destructive behavior. We make poor choices, and we make choices that go against our well-being and what's best for us. And when we do that, we create havoc in our life. You know, another thing about being spiritually fit is using mindfulness in day-to-day life, being mindful of what's happening, being mindful in every day of our life, and having that mindfulness to be a part of the moment, to be a part of where we are when we're there. And I find that oftentimes we're not being mindful. We're actually thinking about something else in its entirety. We're thinking about what happened yesterday, or the fight that took place, or the argument at work, or we're thinking what might happen, or we're thinking about the future. And in those times, because we're not mindful, we're not focusing on the here and now. We're not enjoying our life to the fullest. We're not living our life to the fullest. And we have a tendency of putting ourselves in bad situations, being clumsy, falling, getting hurt, because we're not paying attention to the present moment. Mindfulness helps us not only in spirit, but mind. It keeps us focused. It keeps us without having monkey brain. Mindfulness helps us with our body, because it keeps us aware of our surroundings. It keeps us aware of not falling into a ditch. It keeps us aware of who's around us so we don't get hit over the head. There's a lot of things, not that it's a violent world. It's just things do happen if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, not paying attention. It can happen. But you really take those chances down to almost zero when you're being fully mindful. Well, really to zero when you're being fully mindful, because you will be aware of your surroundings, you'll be aware of the situation, and you'll be able to make great choices and understand exactly what you need to do next. Last but not least, the heart. You know, the heart to me, I know people consider that it's part of the spirit, it's part of the body. Yeah, but I think that it's owed its own conversation here, because I believe that the heart provides the love. The heart is the love, and we're not talking about codependency, and we're not talking about lust and desire. We're talking about actual love, the most important thing, and love for ourselves. Love for our fellow men, and not an egotistical love for ourselves, but a love for ourselves and who we truly are. And this is very powerful stuff and can change our lives forever if we actually focus on that. Relationships. Relationships are part of the heart. It's part of the heart quotient. How are our relationships? What type of relationships do we have? Are we physically fit as far as spiritually fit, as far as heart fit when it comes to these relationships? Do we understand where we stand? Do we understand the value of them? Do we understand the value of the other person? Do we understand the value of ourselves in that relationship? You know, many of us find ourselves in toxic relationships that really get us down. They really stress us out. They add anxiety, depression, and anger into our lives. They make us question our very fabric of our soul. If we're in a toxic relationship and we're dealing with that, we're not taking care of ourselves. You know, because in order to really take care of our heart, we have to really recognize where stress is coming from. Be mindful of the stress. Understand when we're in a relationship that's not healthy, that has no boundaries, that is on the ship to nowhere. Because we can't have a relationship on a ship to nowhere. We have to actually focus on creating the vessel or the ship for which we are in. And to realize that our heart matters. Our heart should precede the mind most of the time. And I'm not talking about emotions like, oh, I'm in love, so I'm going to throw all of my life away for this person. No. It's about actually, when you're in the heart, we're being mindful. Because remember, when we're in the mind, we're thinking all the time, right? We got that mind thing. We got that monkey mind where we're thinking about what happened yesterday and what am I going to eat? I'm starving. And so-and-so said something to me. And what was that message about? Oh, my God, I got to get that text message. Oh, I didn't update for Facebook yet. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. The show's not over with. You see? But when I focus out of that and I focus right now on talking to you, on having this conversation, you and me, about this right here, changes the whole thing. I'm in the moment, part of the now. And I believe that that puts us into the heart space. And that heart space is powerful because it allows us to be honest in all truth and all honesty within our life. And it allows us to be love, not to love, but to be love. It's not about loving all these other people, which it is part of that. And it's about loving ourselves, but it's to be love as well. Love acts from honesty, from a place of beautiful power, from a place of spiritual growth, from a place of spiritually fit, a person that's mindful and honest and loving and caring and being that love energy that's so amazing, so powerful, and so beautifully brilliant. I hope this show has helped and has added to your life. That's why Live Your True Life Perspectives is so important to me, because I want to offer that. Because I believe that this content is owed to you. Because this content doesn't devalue you. It doesn't take away from you. It actually strengthens you, strengthening your character, your love, and where you're at right now. And if you'd like to reach out to me and contact me, go to ashleyburgess.com, Ashley, BERGES.com. You can click on that contact page, send me an email, and I will get back to you ASAP. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, you know it, in 3 shakes.